Hello again, wonderful humans, and welcome back to my channel, Board Game Dads, where I usually talk with, board game dads, but we're doing something special because of Mother's Day this year. We are going ahead and having a board game mom takeover, and I'm super excited to have with me the one and only Bethany of Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews over on YouTube. Bethany, welcome, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
I'm excited too. I gave Bethany a list of possible topics to talk about for our main topic later on in the show, and we'll get to that later. But I'm very excited by the one that she chose. I was hoping someone would choose that one, actually, so I'm glad that she picked that. So there'll be some game picks later on. But before that, just a little quick Q&A with Bethany. So Bethany, one of the things I always am curious about when I meet and talk to new people in the board gaming hobby is, how did you get here, right? How was your origin story, so to speak?
So I had always played card games growing up, and we played like Uno and Candyland and all of that when we were kids. Just always played. And then I played a lot of euchre. You learn that game really fast when your siblings yelling at you, trying to make sure you understand what Trump is, and following suit. And yeah, it was stressful, but the first game that I played that made me realize that there's other games, not that I was in it yet, was Power Grid. That was like my introduction to it, but I wasn't considering myself a gamer. And then Ryan and my brother got really into games, and Ryan went on a work trip, and our eldest was like a baby at the time, and he was able to finagle it to where we could go with him. And I remember when I was in the mall in Aurora in Illinois, and the only places, there's 3 shops I wanted to go to: the local coffee shop, the Disney store, and then the board game store that was in that place. And I was like, I guess I'm a gamer too, if this is like where I wanted to go and I wanted to hang out in there. So that's when I officially considered myself a gamer. And then that following year, Ryan, we were just like, like every new gamer does, they look at the top 100 and they try to figure out like what games they would like. And I was like, we should get Love Letter. I had no idea what it was. And Ryan was like, nobody's going to play a game called Love Letter. But he got it for me anyway, so good on him for that. And then, of course, like, not only will everybody play Love Letter, but they'll play like a gazillion versions of it. So
yeah, good thing they didn't ask him to invest in it, and he said no.
yeah.
So speaking of Ryan, one of the other questions I was curious about was how did you guys meet? Was it was before either one of you were into the hobby, and then you sort of grew as a couple from there?
Sort of. He was playing games slightly before me, but I was always like there. But we had played cards together because we went to school together. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and him and my brother were really good friends. And so, like I said, the card games, we used to play card games all the time. So he would come over, him and his friends, they'd have like poker nights or euchre nights or playing speed, basically every type of card game you could play, you'd like think of. So, we were always gaming together. It was just typically card games. So I stole my brother's best friend, and I made him my best friend. So sorry.
There you go. Well, better than the other way around. That would be so that's great. That's great. Yeah. Power Grid is a pretty hefty one to put your face into early on, huh?
Yeah, they had this song that they used to sing. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember it. It was like doing math in the middle of the night, and they would just like sing that while they did Power Grid. Yeah,
that's funny. So obviously, you are a board game mom. How many children do you have?
We have the 2. We have a 7-year-old who will be 8 in May, and we have a 3-year-old who will be 4 in like 3 weeks. 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, she's going to be 4 really soon.
That's pretty soon. Yeah, and you just had a birthday, correct?
I did. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. And so your Elvis is your daughter, the superhero. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. She appeared in some of our videos with us.
I see that. So where does she stand in the gaming hobby?
She likes basically anything we present to her. She's like really, really easy to please, but I think she's starting. This is a pure Bethany thing. I bet you Ryan would disagree with me, but I think she's starting to get overwhelmed with us always introducing her to new games.
Sure.
I think she just like wants to play the old games that she already liked. Why do we have to play new games when we already have all of these games that she already has talked about and that she already likes? But
welcome to the hobby, kid.
Yes. Yeah, like this is your future.
Yeah, pretty much. That's funny that you said that. I mean, I one of the first modern games that I learned about from my friend who was in the hobby before me a little bit was Carcassonne, and similar to what you said about your daughter, every time I played Carcassonne with him, he had a new expansion. And I was still never really completely wrapped around the rules of the base game, right? I'm still trying to figure out how do I farm effectively. And now there's these other buildings that do this, and this pig does this. And I'm like, dude, you got to let me catch up a little bit. Can we maybe play without one of these things?
Yes.
And I'm glad that happened because now I love Carcassonne. It's one of my favorites, and we play it in this household a lot. What is your favorite thing about being a mom?
Ooh, okay. My favorite thing about being a mom, I like seeing the growth, but like not like them getting bigger, but just the mental capacity of seeing when our kids were young, we did like a few basic like signing to them. And we started it when they were like 6 months old. And when they first start signing back in between, like, what is it, like 8 to 10 months, like just seeing that, like that they understand that. And when they start saying the words and just the growth. And now that our daughter is older, just to see that grow further. And especially with our almost 4-year-old, we, I'm not just trying to talk about games to talk about games, but it's a good indication of stuff that happens of just seeing the progression of games that they can handle. Like we just played Roll For It with her. Ryan just introduced that to her, and they were playing it when I was at work. So the two of them and Ryan were playing it, and she saw that there was a fourth color, and she was like, "Oh, when mom's home, all 4 of us can play this." Nice. Just like, that thought process.
That's very perceptive. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I love watching that development happening.
Yeah, for sure. I have a son. He just turned 2 a few days ago, actually, and the same thing. We did some very basic sign language with him when he was younger, and very exciting when he starts to do it at the right time. Right? There's always a little bit of a okay, and still at this point, even though he's speaking pretty well with a few words stringed together, one thing applies to many different meanings. Like when he says, "I don't like this," he doesn't mean I don't like this. He means I don't want to do this current thing anymore right now. Right. Yeah. So there's that. Excellent. And so we talked a little bit about your how you came into the hobby. Tell me a little bit about how you started creating content and what that journey was like.
So it was Ryan's idea to start it. It's kind of a personal journey. If you watch our first video, he goes into depth about that. I wouldn't recommend that video. The quality is awful.
Everyone's first video is always awful.
It's so bad. We didn't even tell like our friends or family about it. We didn't tell anybody about it. Nobody knew. We didn't talk about it for like a year. But so the whole idea was that we just wanted to he just wanted to lose weight, and he thought, hey, for every pound I lose, we could do a video. So we followed that format for about a year, and that's how we started doing it. We originally called ourselves Pounds and Inches because we were tracking the pounds he lost and the inches that I lost. And then we just switched it because we wanted to be a bit more broad and not so constrictive of, well, like, what if we just have like a horrible month and we can't do any videos, Right. So we just switched that. And that's why maybe 1 out of every like 6 of our videos, we have a segment at the end where we talk about things that we're trying to do to achieve better health in our lives. So that way we can still stay true to that. So that was kind of the origins of that. And that's how it's gravitated to what it is right now.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about this hobby, right? But any hobby that you first start to get into, it almost always sort of branches out a little bit, right? And there's you find these cross curriculum things that kind of go on, and it's just it's great. So that's a great origin story. I really like that. Me, I just was like, hey, I want to be on YouTube's. So I emailed Tom Vassell and said, hey, can I be on Board Game Breakfast? And he was like, yeah, send me a video. And I was like, all right, blah, blah, blah. And then that was that.
I'm on. on, I did it.
I did it. But I'm having a lot of fun with my own channel here because I get to do stuff like this. So we're going to get into our main topic here. Again, I mentioned earlier that I gave Bethany some choices here, and the one that she decided to talk about today were games that portray female women characters in a positive light. I put that on the list. Again, I wanted to talk about it in some way, shape, or form anyway, and I'm glad that it's with you. You know, there's been a lot of controversy, I guess you would call it, recently on online with some board games that are, you know, pretty popular companies, right? That have certain games coming out where people are not enthralled with the way that the females are portrayed either. I mean, usually it's on the cover because that's the first thing people see on the box cover,
Yeah.
but obviously there's artwork within the game as well. You know, and it's to the point where companies have changed things pretty quickly, which I think is a good sign, right? I mean, that means that the voices that are complaining, or not, I don't want to call it complaining. That sounds like you're saying something should not be that because you don't want it for your own opinion. But the voices are getting louder and bigger, and I think people are paying attention to it more, which is fantastic. That shows that the community is growing stronger, I think, anyway. So why not point some of those out? And that's what we're going to do here today. Now, a couple of caveats here. I have 3 games to talk about. So does Bethany. I've only played 2 of my games, so there is that. I won't be able to speak too much about the gameplay of the last one, but the topic is definitely relevant. And neither Bethany or I know what each other's lists are either, so I doubt there's any crossover, but you never know. All right, Bethany, since you are the guest, I'm going to let you go ahead and go first. What's your first game?
All right, so my first game is actually Pandemic. I remember noticing this like the first time we played it, that all of the character cards were just really diverse. There's a bunch of different ethnicities, and there's a really good assortment of male and females. Mm-hmm. And then of course all of the characters are specialists. You know, there's like scientists and there's virologists and just all sorts of things. So it's all these people, and that happens a lot when I was thinking of things, as things that have women portrayed positively often just have a lot of really good diversity as well. Sure. Like it's like they don't always go hand in hand, but they almost go hand in hand. And this is before I was even looking for things. When I wanted to make sure to talk about this because it was the first time I thought about it when I played a game. The first time I played it, like, when did that even come out? Like 7-8 years ago, like the first time we played it. And I saw that immediate. Like I immediately recognized, and you don't have to do it. They can be generic things. You don't even have to put people on them, but that there are people on these cards, and that there's a lot of females on those cards, and that they're intelligent females, and they're not like, I mean, they're wearing what a scientist would wear in a scientific setting.
Yes, not a scientist Halloween costume.
Exactly. And I noticed that, like, it got to the point where I was pointing things out that I remember one time we were, little diversion here. I remember one time we were playing, Ryan had just got all creatures great and small, and the first player token, you could be a girl or a guy, and he knew that I was looking at things like that, and he was like, look at this, Bethany. Look, it's both. because people like to see themselves, and so I was looking for that, and I wasn't even doing it consciously, but it was conscious enough to where when I saw Pandemic and all those cards, I'm like, this is so cool. I just love this.
Yeah. Pandemic is definitely a game that I think broke a lot of molds. It's my origin game. It's the game that I first played. That, nice. And again, going back, my same friend who taught me Carcassonne showed me Pandemic first, and we played it, and I was like, my mind was completely blown that you played as a team against the game. And you know, immediately I was like, I'm going to go buy this game. I didn't buy that game. However, the first game that I did buy, which is my first game on my list as well, my first like new hobby game was Flashpoint Fire Rescue. And has a lot of similarities to what you just mentioned about Pandemic, right? It's a co-op. The characters are true to life. You're playing as firefighters and specialists within that community, right? There's EMS workers and a captain and a driver and many other roles. The artwork in this game is fantastic, period. But like you said, a lot of the characters are female, and they're wearing normal firefighter gear that
Yes.
any person would wear, regardless of their gender. So there's that. I think it's, I guess, easier when you have a game like Pandemic or Flashpoint where the character comes with that sort of look, right? Meaning
Yeah.
the uniform. Because a lot of the games that we were talking about in terms of, portraying women in a sort of objectifying way, 9 times out of 10 are what? Fantasy theme, right? Because
Yeah.
it's fantasy and you can wear anything you want. And what the interesting argument that I see a lot of people bring to the table when they see that is, it's almost like they say, look, besides the fact that you're blatantly showing off parts of this woman's body, none of this is like practical. Like, this does not work. If you're going to wear armor and fight like this, you're not going to be protected from whatever you're fighting against.
You're not going to survive very long.
No, you're not. You're not going to survive that. So, I think in some of the other, at least one of my other picks, I think is even more relevant because it's in a fantasy sort of theme and still done the right way. So excellent. First two picks got Pandemic and Flashpoint 2. Great co-op games with great female characters. All right, Bethany, on to your second pick. What's coming up next?
All right, my second one is actually Charmed and Dangerous. This is a card game, and it has a lot of like fairy tale characters, but it's all females. So all of the like Little Red Riding Hood and Briar Rose and all of that.
I don't think I know this game. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and so there's like this tableau in the middle, and it's I'm trying to remember if you're drawing cards from your deck, and then you're trying to open up this stuff in the middle, and then eventually when enough things are revealed, you can defeat the big bad. But one of the things that I like about this one was that one of the characters, and I'm trying to remember like who it was, because she had candy. Maybe it was like against, I can't remember who the character was. I just remember that she was chunkier. I remember seeing that, like, I mean, she was still like, muscle and everything, but she wasn't just like pure, like skinny, super tiny, but she was, I just remember like that she was chunkier. And then they also had a few different ethnicities portrayed. Like they did Briar Rose. So Sleeping Beauty, they did kind of a Day of the Dead type of theme with her. And then all of the, Yeah. So I thought that was really neat how they did that and how it was geared towards just all the characters were female and just a different way to show these different characters that we're all really familiar with, these fairy tale characters. Right. That was Charmed and Dangerous. They also had these like these charming cards. So it's like charming, like Prince Charming, and they're like defense cards. So you like throw them away. And it's like a defense type of thing. But
that's funny. Is this a co-op as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. I had never heard of that one actually. Cool. My next game is not a co-op. I don't think you can, although I think there's a co-op version of it now. That's Dice Throne. In Dice Throne, you're playing as one character and you've got all these different dice combination abilities and you can upgrade stuff. And you're basically just trying to empty your opponent's hit points. You can play it 2-on-2 as well. But the artwork, again, in this one is great. In fact, you take out like a pack for your character and it sort of unfolds into your player board with spots for your cards and your tokens and all that stuff. The character I did play as when I played this one was called the Gunslinger, and it was a female. And there are, I looked through all the characters earlier today. I think there's almost an equal split between male and female in this one. And again, this more of a fantasy type of thing, right? There's not too much realism in this, but all the artwork, all of the portrayals of the female characters are just positive and lifelike still, without being, gratuitous and just over the top. I was like, I don't care that this is a female character. I want to be the gunslinger because it's a gunslinger. So I was attracted to the gunslinger, artwork of it, as opposed to anything else. And so, yeah, that's really great. Dice Throne, again, a tactical 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 game. And I believe there's a co-op version. I want to say it's called Dice Throne Adventure, but I'm not positive on that one. That's my number 2. All right, Bethany, getting down to the wire here. I'm assuming you saved the best for last. What is your final pick?
So I was very intentional that I wanted to choose something very different about all three of the games. And so my last one, it's going to seem so weird, but it's Kanban EV.
Okay.
I've actually never played Kanban, but the same characters is in there, and like the boss is Sandra. It's a woman. She's the one roaming the board, and then like you can play like a nice Sandra and a mean Sandra based on, you know, however you want to play. But I mean, it would be so easy to have made Sandra. She's the boss, you know, of this car, you know, car, not company. They're building cars. Kanban EV. Yeah, everybody knows what I'm talking about. It would be so easy to have made that a dude, right? Like it would have been, it wouldn't have been here or there because it didn't affect the gameplay at all.
Sure.
But just that conscious decision to make Sandra, like you don't have to do that, and you did. It's just a little, like this little pink token that roams the board. There's like no card for her or anything like that. And so
it's not even like a portrayal of what she looks like.
It's just the fact that it's her.
Wow.
And I like, because you don't need, you did not need that whatsoever. It could have just been anybody. Right. It could have just been the boss, right? Yep. You could have just had the boss down, but that it was chosen to be Sandra. And I just love that. And of course, you know, I noticed that that was a choice that they made, and that I liked that choice. Even if the game was mean to me, I still like that they did that.
I have never played that. Looks like quite the heavy game. I don't know how it would fare at that one.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of those games to where I don't understand it until after we score. There's a few games like that happened to me. Yeah.
Yep, that will happen. All right, so I've got one last pick here, and again, like I said, this is the one that I haven't played either. So there's that. This is from designer Isaac Vega. He's done, I believe, Dead of Winter, and the game that I'm talking about here, which is Ashes: Rise of the Phoenixborn. Specifically, that one came out, I think, in 2015, 2016, and they are just now reprinting Ashes Reborn, Rise of the Phoenixborn. This is I guess another card/dice, you know, kind of skirmish type game, a one-on-one, similar to a Summoner Wars, which is another Black Hat game. And it has a ton of expansion packs and things like that. And again, a really, really good, diverse looking character set. To the point where, you know, sometimes the illustrations are so enhanced and dynamic that you don't even realize what the race or gender of the character is that you're looking at, right? Yeah. And again, that's with the whole fantasy thing. But I picked this one specifically because I looked at some of the artwork, and a couple of the things that that we talked about earlier, where there were some portrayals of women that were not positive in terms of how they were posed or what they were wearing. You know, there was a couple of pictures where the character was posed in a way, but because of what she was wearing, it was not as like, you know,
it didn't matter.
Lit up arrows pointing to this particular spot. It went well with the character. It went well with what that Phoenixborn was, you know, about in terms of their powers and things like that. And again, this is all from some very quick reading on the game. I have never played it. But I know that in looking at some interviews with Isaac, I know that this is something he takes very seriously as well. And so that, you know, when people like that are in the position to make games like that, then, you know, we're getting progress somewhere. And that's, I think, a good thing.
Can I do an honorable mention that I just thought about?
Sure.
Because I saw it behind me, Chai. Oh, look. Oh my gosh. Look how awesome
and it's
I am
tea.
at that. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Chai, all the artwork on there is really diverse, really, really diverse. Even when it comes to terms of ability, they have diverse people that are abilities as well. And so that the artwork in that is just so awesome. And it's so good. So many different girls, boys, and ethnicities, and just all sorts of stuff. And
that's great.
Yeah. And I think that they're going to be launching a 2-player version of that too, I think, on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I've yet to play that one, but it looks gorgeous out on the table. Some cool looking components. So you did an honorable mention, so I have to do one as well. And good thing I can think on the fly.
I just saw it behind me, and I'm like, I have to talk about it.
No, that's fine. We usually do honorable mentions on these holiday spotlight things anyway, so that's fine. Mine is, I believe you mentioned something earlier about having a game that had just like two sides for the character. And the one that came to mind when you said that was actually Robinson Crusoe, The Adventures on the Cursed Island. There are, I think, 4 roles in that game. There's a cook, an architect, a soldier, and explorer, I believe. And they all have two sides. They all have a male version and a female version. And it's just the artwork that's different. The abilities or things like that don't come into play. But, thinking back to what you said about that other game in particular, I remember looking at the cooks in this game, and the male cook and female cook are rather larger, sort of people. And I'm glad
they
that
have to make sure the food is good.
Oh, yeah, they have to test the food.
Yes.
You do not trust a skinny chef, is what I've been told. So there's that. All right, folks, that's going to start to wrap it up with our board game mom takeover here. I want to thank Bethany once again for joining us. You can check out her YouTube channel where her and Ryan talk about many different board games, and you can even see her superhero daughter every once in a while on there. That's Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews. And they're also on Instagram and Twitter. And that blog that Bethany was talking about earlier can still be found on Board Game Geek, right? The inches and pounds.
Pounds and inches. Yep.
Pounds and inches. Excellent.
Yep.
All right. That's it for today, folks. My name is Anthony.
I'm Bethany.
And you've been watching Board Game Dads. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.